Michael.
Thank you very much, Patrick Amimo, for that update. Patrick Amimo, our political affairs reporter, but well-versed in matters to do with the National Assembly and Parliament. And later on, we're going to be catching up with him as well, this time hopefully from Parliament, where we'll get more details and possibly what will have been happening, and maybe even get a few interviews thrown in there. So do stay with us right here on KTN News. But for now, would like to come to the panel discussion this morning. And let me start first of all by introducing the guests that I have this morning. And to my extreme left, we have Dr. Hassan Mohammed, who is the Deputy CEO for National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC. Good morning and thank you for joining us. We also have Paul Aol, who is a lawyer, but also a political analyst. Thank you for joining us. And last but not least, we have Vincent Kimosop, who's also a political analyst. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. And let me start with you, Dr. Hassan Mohammed, being the Deputy CEO of NCIC. Maybe just give us a general scope of the elections that we had in 2017. Of course, we know that we're going to have the ruling tomorrow, but we already have an idea of how things panned out compared to 2013. And one of the worries that was there was this spatting of violence and, leaders possibly being responsible. Have we learned our lessons, would you think?
Thank you very much. First of all, just a little bit of correction. I'm Mr. Hassan Mohammed, not Dr. Hassan Mohammed. As far as the elections was concerned, I think generally we were happy about the way things stand up, especially during the election and before the election. I think it appears Kenyans probably, one, they had learned their lesson from 2007. But number two, I think the measures which were put in place have worked a lot, because especially, you know that hate speech, for example, was controlled so much, and that's one of the things which resulted in the violence in 2007. So I think generally Kenyans were very good. They behaved well before the elections. They lived well with their neighbors. They went to the polling stations, voted and went back home. I think problems started, of course, a little bit of problems after the elections, after the announcement of the results, and that was also not widespread as we feared.
As it was previously.
Yes.
Okay. Vincent, do you agree that possibly we have made strides in that regard?
Yes, lots of strides. And just to echo what the Deputy CEO said, when you really look at these elections, I think the Kenyans demonstrated that they understood the relationship between their lives and leadership. They played their role. They turned out in large numbers. They were peaceful. And the victor in this election was the Kenyan people. It was also very clear that when it came to playing their part, they did their part. And as you know very well, our constitution says that the sovereignty is and power is with the people. And that can only be exercised directly or indirectly through elected representatives. It was very clear where the power lies. The power was with the people, and they did their part. In fact, I remember some people saying that for us, we have done our part. If there will be any problems, people should not bring them back to us. We did our part. So for me, I celebrate the Kenyan voter. I celebrate the Kenyan public. We were able to really show that we are a country that lives to the ideals of democracy. If there were failings and if there were anomalies, they were not on the part of the people. They were in the institutions and the other processes that was beyond Kenyans. And actually, even if they took place, Kenyans already had done their part through their taxes they paid to facilitate those institutions to actually deliver on what their sovereign will was. So in my view, we celebrate the Kenyan voter. They did their part.
All right. Paul, your thoughts and comments on that?
I have a feeling that our democracy has developed quite substantially. Like if you look at even what the issues were in this election, you realize that this election was more issue-based compared to 2013. You could see even the issues of UNGA coming up, issues of domestic and foreign borrowing, issues of development where Jubilee would say that some of these things have not been done for this number of years. NASA saying this country is putting us into debt, serious debt. And you could see that more or less issues dominated more than 2013, when it was more emotional of who should be going to ICC and who should not be going to ICC. I think that's the first thing. Secondly, I think also this election has also managed to produce, or you can say that people who've been elected have been elected in their own right and capacities and consideration. You can see that in some areas where so many strong women have been elected. You look at Waiguru, you look at Joyce Laboso, you look at Charity Ngilu. It tells you that that issue where you tend to think that our election, some of the consideration is patrilineal, you get to see that that is changing. Also, you look at places where in Meru, a 23-year-old has been elected. So you can basically say that the Kenyan voter are now beginning to look at what is my interest in all this, or who is better placed to take care of my interest in all this.
All right, Mr. Mohammed, there are obviously lessons that possibly have not been learned, or there could be things that we could adjust to make it better. And one of the things is the question, the relationship between justice and peace, because we can talk about having peace and not having violence, people not losing their lives, but the underlying current that would carry that is justice. When there is no justice, then people are likely to come up in arms. Possibly just to help us understand whether Kenyans are getting to a point where we are seeking justice, but in the legal manner.
Yeah, I think so. Of course, there were a few skirmishes here and there. But by and large, I think Kenyans have accepted that the issues should be resolved by the courts, and therefore when the matter, for example, of the disputed presidential elections was taken to the court, Kenyans have been quiet. They have been waiting. They are patiently waiting for the outcome of those of the Supreme Court judgment, and I think that's a good thing. We should be proud of as a nation, because we have set up institutions, and we should allow those institutions to do their job. Of course, if we don't think that those institutions are going to do the job for which they are set up, there are ways, of course, of dealing with that. But I think as long as the institutions are there, we should allow them. Just like the way we allowed the IEBC to do the elections, because we did not ask for another institution to take over the elections. We have the IEBC, and we allowed it to do the elections. And then after that, then if there's any dispute, we should allow also the Supreme Court to deal with that, or the courts to deal with those issues.
All right, Paul?
Yes, I can actually say that this country, if you look at what is going on social media, you can tend to think that the country is actually burning. But you can get to see that more or less we're beginning to trust our institutions, where if there are issues, then we are trying to say that, yes, we can ventilate these issues, or we can get ourselves to have these issues clarified. Because you even look at how many cases went through the courts before the election, where like any party who felt aggrieved that there are issues that they wanted to clarify, they went through the court. And even if you look at the issues that have come through the Supreme Court, they are very, very weighty issues that simply tell you that we are beginning more or less to trust in institutions to steer us or to clarify. Initially, you saw that there was some sort of unwillingness by NASA, but after much consideration, they're able to get to the Supreme Court, and they've brought some of the issues that they felt were very key to determination of this, and we are waiting for the outcome.
I forgot to say something, Mike, if you could allow me, in the first instance, that even in this election, you remember, if you look at the organizing question, it has been on emotive issues in the past election. And in 2013, of course, it was the ICC, which was, as you know, as my colleague has pointed out, was very emotive. But in this election, the focus was on the electoral process. And when you look at a focus in a national election about an electoral process, you see everybody becomes a winner, because particularly that the will of the Kenyan public is going to be respected through a credible electoral process. I think for me that was a plus. When you also look at the things that are before the Supreme Court, the discussion around the integrity of the process, the discussion around the role of public officers, cabinet secretaries, for example, in elections came to the fore. When you also look at the issue of the maturity that we've had in our institutions, and allow me to comment some of them. The NCIC, when their discussion around how do we ensure that we play our part? They engaged other people. They worked closely with the private sector, the Mkenya Daima, worked very closely with the civil society, the Wiyano program, and other organizations. And then also when recently we had problems, when civil society organizations, some of them had challenges. I'm talking about AFRICOG, the KHRC. You saw institutions of government, IPOA, coming out very clearly on calling for accountability on the part of the police. You saw the Kenya National Human Rights Commission standing and says, hey, we stand for, these are government bodies speaking about the rule of law. You look at even the way Matiang'i looked at it, established a process that will help facilitate the decision at the end of the day, not an individual saying this is what is going to happen, but us allowing processes and the rule of law to guide our decisions. I think those are things that we are worth celebrating. I think also the media. If you look at the level of information, the level of scrutiny, and here I'm looking at social and also looking at mainstream media. My brother has pointed out that the venting that is going on social media, people are looking like we are in a war situation. It's genuinely understood because elections is emotive. And when people are not given platforms to ventilate and to bring out the issues that are happening, that is dangerous. I think somebody once says that when people start talking, what is going to happen? Fights can happen. So it is important. Let people ventilate. Let them share what their issues are concerned, why we are not happy, and let those processes be responded. If you had the privilege of even looking at some of the submissions that are before the Supreme Court, you realize that these allegations are raised and there is comprehensive response from the other part telling us the importance of accountability. So in my view, I think what we need after the Supreme Court delivers a judgment tomorrow, either we go for a rerun or upholding the decision of the declaration that was made by IEBC, because those are the two possible scenarios. I think it is important at some point that we retreat, all of us, and this is the challenge to IEBC and other institutions, on us telling our stories, the successes and the failures from this process, so that we know how to